Powerhouse Energy Group has developed a process which can utilise waste, be it plastics, end-of-life cycle tyres and plenty of other waste materials, and convert them into so-called syngas or synthesis gas into usable streams of energy. Paul Emmitt is the Powerhouse Chief Executive. He joins us now. Paul, welcome. This fits in beautifully into what a lot of people are talking about, renewables, way we can use up all the waste that we're generating. But what I've just said is, I know, is relatively simplistic. Explain more about what it is you're doing.
Okay, so basically we've developed a process that takes non-recyclable waste, whether, as you said, whether that be plastic, tyres, wood, whatever we need to take. We gasify it at an extremely high temperature, so about 900, 950 degrees C, in a rotating kiln. And basically we had a synthetic gas out of the exit end of the kiln along with the residue. The synthetic gas we then clean, run it through a pressure swing absorber, which basically takes hydrogen from that gas, and then we can produce hydrogen as a feedstock for other processes. We then take the remaining gas, what we call the tail gas, from that unit, and we run that through to fire the process itself, the gas fire the process itself, and to run the power generation on site as well. And we can export power from that unit as well.
I was going to say, so your clients use that end of process material for what process? What's the offtake look and feel and is used for?
So the offtake really, where we see the market at the moment, is you're taking hydrogen offtake for heavy goods vehicles, road transport, natural gas replacement in industrial units like glass making, steel making, and then we take the power directly to the grid.
Yes, and what stage are you there? Because you're not supplying industrial amounts of gas at the moment.
No, so we produce, our standard unit is 40 tonne a day of feedstock input of waste, and we produce approximately 2.5 tonne a day of hydrogen, which sounds a small amount, but it's 2,500 kilos of hydrogen. When you think a car only takes probably about 17 kilos, it's a lot.
I want to talk more about the hydrogen in just a minute. Let's start at the beginning of the process. Where do you get your waste from? I mean, we all generate waste. As I said, it's plastics. Crikey, we use enough of that.
Exactly. And so we're taking the waste from basically the non-recyclable waste that you put. I don't know whether you do it here, but I live in Wales, we separate everything.
Indeed.
If you've got dirty plastic, say a lasagna tray, or as an example, has still got food left on it, that won't go through the recycling process unless it's cleaned. We can take that as it stands. So we can take the dirty plastic that usually goes to landfill.
That's an interesting point, because that's the first time I've ever heard it by someone that uses the stuff, how it needs to be clean.
Yes.
That must take a fair bit of waste out. Do you spend a lot of money in filtering waste that you can use?
No, luckily the recycling facilities will drop that waste out in some form.
So it's done before you get it?
Yeah, so we get the waste basically in the form that we need to use it.
And do you pay for it?
No, we get paid for it.
You get paid for taking it off?
Yeah,
okay, so
because,
you get... I was going to say, so you get paid coming in and also...
Yes, we get a gate fee. Well, a gate fee for the waste coming in because it's being diverted from landfill. So if you think at the moment landfill is probably about 120 odd pound a tonne, well, if we are taking that waste instead, then we can get obviously a reduction on that because you need the manufacturer or the supplier to make money. And then we take that a gate fee on that, and then yes, we charge, obviously we can sell the hydrogen out the end or the power.
And your process is paid for by the waste?
Yeah, over time, yes.
Yeah. Okay. You own the process, you're proprietary owners, you got a patent on this?
We've got 3 patents pending on the technology. They were filed a long time ago, back in 2019, so we're just waiting for decisions on those. And we have an IP around the control of the kiln, which is our algorithm that we've developed that allows us to set a recipe in reality for the kiln itself. So if somebody says, I've got X feedstock, we've got a model that can tell us exactly what the syngas composition that we're going to get out is, and then we set those parameters in our control system, and that's how the kiln is controlled. Okay,
that's key actually, what you just said about the fact you got this patent going back to 2019. I want to show a share price chart because we've got one here going back, even in fact it's just the beginning of 2023 actually. But I've drawn this red vertical line on here at your instruction because that was a seminal part of a point for the company, wasn't it? Because you sort of changed the structure and what's happening. And indeed, you haven't been at the business that long, have you?
No, I took over as CEO in, I think it was October.
Yeah, just before this red line.
Yeah, just before the red line. What we did was we needed to pare the business back. I mean, the business was run very much like a corporate, and really it's a startup. So we've taken the business back into startup mode. We've been through all the finances and cut everything back. We've restructured the board. We brought a CFO into the executive team, which the company had not had before, which has given us that much more stability. And then we re-looked at the business model itself and made a decision that we don't really want to develop plants. We don't want to build plants ourselves. So we've looked at licensing and royalty type of scheme, which we've got an agreement with National Hydrogen Australia for potential 4 plants on that type of scheme.
In Australia? Or?
Yes. One in Australia, one in Italy, one in Switzerland, and one in Hong Kong.
All right.
So, and that's a much better model for us. It's a low capital risk from our side. We get the feed at the front end, so we get to do the design, the front end design, on a paid for basis. But then we are involved right the way through the project, and obviously we then provide us our logarithm into the process and take the royalty on the outputs.
I should just say at this point of the interview that I know that you're in a closed period, so you can't talk about the fundamentals of the balance sheet, profit and loss, and so forth. But certainly you'll be interested to see what it is you produce when you come through with the numbers. I want to talk a little bit more about hydrogen. We hear, I mean, as an interviewer, I'm hearing more and more about companies entering this particular space. Yeah. But I don't get the feeling it's there yet, where we are looking at something which is commercially viable. Obviously, you're in it for the long haul, I guess. Yeah. Where do you see the hydrogen demand coming from? You mentioned vehicles. Yeah. Again, I'm looking to install a heat pump. They're saying hold off until we get hydrogen-fired boilers and so forth. We're not there. No. How long are we going to have to wait before hydrogen becomes a meaningful part of our lives?
I think hydrogen is an interesting thing. I mean, you see this morning that the government have decided that they need more gas-fired power stations. Ideally you could fire those with hydrogen, but it's not a great fuel to do that with. If you go back to when I was a child, our town's gas, generated from coal gas, contained 20% hydrogen, and then we took the hydrogen out and became 100% natural gas. So I think...
what was, just out of interest, what happened to the waste of that? Because that was a long while ago, clearly. Was it just taken off into the air?
That was...
part of it.
No, it was burnt in the house. It was just part of it.
Yeah, it was part of the thing.
Because it was coal gasified. It was made from gasified coal, basically, or coal bed methane. And so what we did was, so what I see happening now is, yes, the grid might go to 20%, which is really what the sealing systems and the compressors can handle at the moment. Will it go 100%? I don't think so. I really see the big sell in hydrogen being replacement of natural gas industrial units, so large users, heavy goods vehicles, trains, and so the heavy transport. Eventually, we may get to hydrogen fuel cell cars. I mean, a lot of the manufacturers are developing them now, and of course, you've got JCB looking at vehicles, industrial vehicles with hydrogen combustion engines. So that's the way I see it going. I don't see it being, and this is my opinion only, I don't see that being a day-to-day fuel that we would use in the house.
So before we get there, you've got a process which is going to start producing money at some point. Correct. In the not distant future. Yeah. Tell us more about, from an investment point of view, what an investor should be looking at in terms of some of the returns and the targets you're working to.
So the targets we're working to, really, I mean, it's simple at this stage. The main target is to get the first plant up and running. That is likely to be Australia, although we do have other projects on the back burner at the moment. We still have the Protos site in Chester, so we still have planning and permitting on that site. But I think, in reality, we've got 3 stages that's going to happen in the sort of next 12 months that the investors need to sort of keep an eye out for. Is we are going to have to announce the funder for the Australian projects. We will sign option or start the Ballymena project, and we will get a 2.5 tonne a day pilot plant up and running in Bridgend that investors can turn up, look at, we can test material, and you can really see that this thing works. You've
got government support for this. I mean, it seems like a sort of project that should receive some sort of encouragement on the basis that we're working towards a goal to be a lot cleaner than we have in the past been.
Unfortunately not. And in fact, dealing with waste, non-recyclable plastic isn't even really looked at as being useful for low carbon hydrogen standard either. We lobbied at DESNES and BEIS prior to that, and we try and get this we try and get the message across that we are saving this plastic from going to landfill, therefore we should be getting some kind of carbon credit on it. But what we've done, we've set Powerhouse up, really, the model in Powerhouse, to work regardless of subsidy. We don't take credit for our residue in our model, and we don't take credit for heat. So there's an upside to that once we get the first plant up and running.
Talking about getting credit, I want to go back to the share price chart and ask you a question about where we are. It's a penny stock, basically.
Yes.
It's still a tiddler. But nonetheless, from what you're saying, there is the potential ultimately to make money, and make money quite handsomely out of this if it all works out the way you planned. What's this spike for?
That spike basically is for the announcement of the agreement on the Australian projects, and the next milestone we're going to have is the funding for the Australian projects. And I think we will see a fair rise in the price. Our liquidity is excellent. You know, the amount of shares traded a day is pretty phenomenal for a company of trading at this size. So
I think I'm right in saying, though, of the shareholders, there are quite a few large. There's a family holding, which is a fair stake, isn't it? And then
it's about 15%.
Hargreaves Lansdowne and so forth has got a 20% stake and so forth. So there are some really big shareholders involved there.
Yeah.
But you're still nonetheless seeing good.
Yes, we see very good volume traded every day.
Good.
And I think that's going to help us as we move forward. But I think really, you know, for me, I try. And not what people want to hear. I try not to look at the share price every day. I need to get my...
You have no control over it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
and I need to get my projects off the ground. I need to make sure that we are aiming to becoming a profitable company, and the share price will come with it, and the shareholders will see the benefit of that as it comes.
Well, look, it's an interesting story, and please do keep in touch. Good to hear you when you get your new set of results out, because I know we can talk more about the strength of the balance sheet. Because I think that's key, and funding, of course, going forward as well. Look, Paul, in the meantime, thanks for joining us.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you on the studio here to talk about what's happening at Powerhouse Energy. Paul Emmitt is the Chief Executive of the business.